Bear with me in case you face some noises from outside because I am actually sitting in somebody else's house in Mauritius.
Please,
I have come to inaugurate a new exchange being set up, which is a Pan-African exchange called Afrinax, which will be run out of Mauritius, but it will bridge Mauritius with the rest of Africa and raise funds for the African businesses. This has been an initiative being held by BSE at the behest of Government of India. So thank you for allowing me to speak today. Uh, I think Professor Seth is somebody we all look up to. We grew up reading about him, reading on him, and reading all his papers. So I think it's a great honor uh, to be speaking with him today. In some ways, the COVID is um, a great challenge that the world has currently going through. I've been told UK is again having a fifth wave or sixth wave, despite being fully vaccinated. And I think that tells everyone in India also to be humble, not take all the achievements as given. We have a long way to go. I think it's not going to go away easily. India has, in some ways, been saved. Uh, and there are many reasons, but uh, some of them, if you look back during the early days of January, February 2020, we had a lot of experts of Indian origin, as I call them. They descended on Indian television. Nobody looks at them in America, but they descend on Indian television. And some of them, I think one Professor Lakshmi Narayan, there was one more person I recall very vividly, uh, showing their models that India would have around 300 million, 30 crore 300 million or 30 crore infections by July 2020 and around 100 million deaths by July 2020 based on their modeling. And that is the time when Indian GDP had not gone down so much, but the stock market started going down. It went down from 42,000 Sensex to around 25,800, almost 40% down. So that time nobody asked me, Mr. Maitra asked about the divorce between the real street and the Lal street. That time nobody asked me that why the stock market is going down. Most of us in India are not invested in stock markets, so we all become happy when stock markets go down. It is basically the pleasure in other people's misery, and when it goes up we start feeling bad and left out. And I think that is what it happens across the world. But across the world, especially in developed countries, most people are also invested in stock markets in some way or other, so that's why they don't feel so bad when markets go up. But effectively, what happened is that that 30 crore numbers was huge. Why the stock markets basically go up or down is not about the past data. The data which you get, like GDP data, they are what I call low frequency data. They are stale data. They come of the previous year and after 6 8 months. Whereas the stock market actually anticipates the future and tries to invest based on the future prediction and not in the past. And that's where I think when the predictions were dire of the Indian economy or Indian society, that is the time markets went down. And then people realized that COVID is bad, but not as bad as it is made out to be. Slowly, the confidence returned. And I recall very vividly on March 23, 2020, when Prime Minister Mr. Modi announced the lockdown. Next second, as soon as his speech got over, I wrote on Twitter that BSE will function normally. And I was taken to task by everyone, including our members, our stockbrokers, our investors, television, and everyone, saying you are trying to promote speculation when the entire country is worried about a lot of deaths, and why you want to keep the markets on. And I said, basically, when in panic, if you close the markets, then people are going to basically, if they require money, they will not be able to liquidate their assets and actually use that money for other purposes like medicines and all. And that's why markets need to be open. Fortunately, Government of India had actually discussed with us before that, before the lockdown. Many people think that lockdown was a kind of a decided by Mr. Modi at the start of the speech. No, it was not. It was done almost a week before. and that's where they already made they had already made the stock market also as an essential service. Why I'm telling you this is many times we want to blame somebody, like we want to blame Mr. Modi or government for all the miseries we might be going through, but it's actually the other way around. And no leader of any society in the world, whether it's a village or a city or a state or a country, can save the entire world. I mean, we have heard of stories of Krishna and all, that Krishna saved the entire Vrindavan by lifting the mountain on his little finger. I think those are stories only. What we need to understand is that it is basically people's power. And as soon as the 70 days lockdown was done, again the dire prediction started. I had worries about people dying of hunger and that creating riots. So I also wrote to government of India about providing food, free food to across the country, because if people can't come out, what will they eat? Because 90% of India actually eats after earning every day. They don't have the savings. And that's where I think government of India from April 1, 2020 till December 31, 2020, and again June 2021 till now, is providing free food to 80 crore people, 800 million people. 800 million people is actually Europe, America, Canada, and I think Mexico combined. Just to give you a reminder, last year, Mr. President Joe Biden's son for UN food program was given Nobel Prize for feeding few people at UN's money, and they got and other people's money, and they got the Nobel Prize. But 80 crore people, 800 million people, Europe, America, Canada, Mexico combined, we don't even bother. We think it's a joke that government has given this food. Government need not have given. And what has happened is that has actually ensured that the law and order happens. India did not have Black Lives Matter kind of riots. India did not have riots because of all these reasons. The money reached out. The high-tech part of India, the e-governance part of India, I think has stood beautifully. They have provided services to the country in an amazing way. The free subsidies were going into everyone's mobile, the poor people's, farmers' mobile, poor people's mobiles, and so on and so forth. And the trains were running at like 4 or 5 times the speed of normal trains, goods trains, were running for sending food to each nook and corner of India. And that's, I think, the beauty of democracy. But also we need to give credit where it is due, that is to the government. They also, not only central government, but also state governments, each province, each city, each village. I think everyone has worked together, all our health workers. Today we have reached 1 billion vaccine dose. Nobody actually figured out. Today, the beautiful part about Indian intelligentsia is that we basically shame ourselves by comparing all the development parameters like vaccines comparable to the rest of the world. Not the Somalias and Ugandas of the world, where our per capita GDP is lower than them. But we want to have better facilities, better vaccine rate, better everything compared to US and UK. Just to give you a perspective, US has 33 times more per capita GDP. That's why they are 33 times richer. India has only 3% per capita GDP vis-a-vis US, and still we want to shame our governments, saying that you didn't do this. It's almost like saying that a poor farmer's son is asking a Mercedes for a birthday gift because the next rich neighbor's son got a Mercedes. And that's why we keep on asking, as basically people who know fully well, especially our economists, knowing fully well that this is not possible, but they want to shame the government. Probably they want government to work even harder. But idea is that even Indians have to work harder. It cannot be only the government or a prime minister has to work harder. All of us have to work harder. And that is the message I would give to everyone, saying 1 billion vaccine dose. India was not supposed to do it. We were a very poor country. We were supposed to be written off. We were supposed to die 100 million people. Nothing of that sort happened, right? And it did not happen by accident. It took a lot of guts, gumption, hard work by everyone. And we must give credit where it is due. Having said that, what is going to happen now going forward? I think India has come out with flying colors, and I would thank Prime Minister Modi and all his colleagues, as well as all state government leaders, all chief ministers, all their ministers, and also the city leadership like Mumbai, Calcutta, Delhi, where there has been tremendous sort of acute need of food and other things which they have managed well. And also, of course, our health workers, our scientists, everyone, because India is pretty much the only country which has been able to uh, handle at the COVID effectively, not only for itself, but also for rest of the world. We not only ran ourselves well, despite 70 days lockdown and other lockdowns, but we ran the rest of the world well. We ended up running all the banks. Most banks in the world have their back office in India. Most retailers have their back office in India. Most large companies have their IT back offices in India. And India ran every system of the world really beautifully. And I think that is also going to tell you that going forward, India is going to emerge as a superpower, not only in pharmaceuticals, which we are today. Grudgingly, the world has recognized that China has given us the gift of COVID and India has given us the gift of vaccine. And of course, who is better, right? People who give vaccine and not people who give viruses. So somewhere on the line, I think India is being recognized. India has acted very responsibly by providing HCQ initially, then ivermectin, and now the vaccines have again started getting exported to rest of the world. I think over last 18 months, the geopolitics has changed drastically in favor of India. The Quad has come into play. India also fought one small war in Tibet and pretty much won decisively and very responsibly. And that's where I think overall India's status in the world situation has come up several notches. And it did not happen by accident. It did not have to happen. It is Modi's India which has happened. And whether Calcutta likes it or not, or Mumbai likes it or not, it is Modi's India, and it is Modi's hard work, which we must all acknowledge, even grudgingly, right? And I think there is no harm in grudgingly accepting what Mr. Modi has achieved and given us as the benefits to reap across the world. Uh, the technological trends that have manifested over last 18 months is basically about accelerating things which could have happened over 25 years have happened now in 2 years. For example, the e-commerce, India is booming in e-commerce. The new jobs of a variety of connecting with e-commerce has boomed. Pharmaceuticals, again, India is now also becoming a capital for APIs. Earlier, APIs were being managed by China. The generics, the paracetamols, and even vaccines were being managed by India. Now, India has also provided incentives to start the API manufacturing. Of course, the steel manufacturing India is now picking up. Every type of manufacturing India is picking up. But in some ways, I think Mr. Maitra is telling me that the time is over. But overall, I think the trends are very much in favor of the IT. India actually exports $150 billion a year. It should become $1 trillion in next 5 years. The textiles, India exports around 16 billion. I think over few years it should become $200 billion. But for me, one message is very clear: the IT and services are going to take India very far. Pharmaceutical is going to take India very far, and more importantly, geopolitics is going to take India very far, because India, first time in its independence history, is now with the right people and not on the wrong side of the history. With that, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir. Because I was advised by the boss of the program, Madam Aindrila, to ensure that for the first we stick to 10 minutes. But I possibly could not stop you, sir, because what an introduction about India, and I'm sure if the Honorable Prime Minister would have heard you, nobody would have made him happier with regard to many points that you mentioned. But there are questions, we are surely coming to that, but one or two pointers, sir, overall completely in agreement with you, that we would love to be very critical of ourselves, that's our character. But there could be one or two questions that the vaccine doses. India has done very well because China has done 105 crore as far as vaccination doses are concerned, and India is number 2 as far as the total vaccination dose is concerned. Yes, the coverage of the population currently stands at 22%, approximately that. But 100 crore vaccination is also the truth. And we have miles to go, and we have promises to keep. And you have raised the positives about how India handled with regard to the free food being provided to 800 million people in India, and and you're talking about several bright spots. You also mentioned about the geopolitical aspect, and I think this is the right time to introduce, and we'll come back to you, Ashish sir, at the end of the program, because first we thought that we will have the initial remarks from everyone, then we could again come back to individuals. And you mentioned about geopolitics, and I think we have amongst us a Padma Bhushan awardee, the highest civilian awardee of India, Jagdish sir, within us. And I think Ashish sir rightly mentioned that we all grew up almost. But when we say we all grew up, that's almost making Jagdish sir 102 years old, gentlemen, which I'm not going to do, right? I'm only going to say, yes, he also grew up along with us, if sir does not dislike what I just mentioned about him, because I think
Right.
that would be unfair to him to be making him demographically completely obsolete, which I don't want to do at this time. And to his introduction, and I think we completely we read what he writes, and he writes from the heart. And I think we have read that primarily the four areas sir has been working on has been in the area of consumer behavior, on relationship marketing, on the geopolitical analysis, which Ashish just mentioned, and also on the competitive strategy. So, but before that,
Yeah.
Sir has been a very, very acclaimed academician. He has been doing it for 50 years plus. He has been with the MIT, the Columbia University, the South California. I'm sure he could. My pointer to Sir would be, though, because Sir would have a lot to contribute. But I would also like to limit the scope at times, because we are very much concerned about India, Sir, and.
Yeah.
We have also seen very, very different trends, as we saw people losing their jobs during the COVID. And it's not only blue collar people who lost their jobs, because it's also the white
Right.
collar jobs. And as we know, sir, white collar jobs are difficult to fall and more difficult to rise. So we saw that. And people had to delve into their savings. They had to do that. The discretionary spendings are down. So I think that is also affecting the demand, and the government
Yeah.
are compelled. Many state governments of India and the government is also thinking of working on the universal basic income, a concept by Thomas More long time back, which has been started by many people. And at the same time, we also observe another trend, the pent up demand per se. And also,
Yeah.
we have seen in India that post COVID, people are buying cars which are more than 10 lakhs. If they were buying cars less than 10 lakhs prior to the onset, prior to the setting of COVID, they're doing that. The smartphones or the laptops which are buying is also of a very, very high, of a higher denomination. So we see a lot of changes. We see WFH coming in. We see hybrids. We see change in lifestyles. So I think, sir, we are all ears to be hearing you, because as the
Sure.
master of the game, I leave it to you, sir. But I'm constrained again. We'll get back to you. But 600 seconds would be the first thing which is available to you, sir. And I am handing over to you at 8:24, sir. Thank you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much for inviting me, first of all, and for such people like Ashish Chavan and, of course, KV Kumar. I want to focus on 3 points, and I'll go very fast so that we have more time for questions and answers conversation. The pandemic's biggest impact was the lockdown and mandatory shelter in place or lockdown completely, where the economy came to a screeching halt worldwide. The main consequence it resulted in was that we went from physical to digital. We had a digital platform all over the world, and even in India, for example, we have a very good platform so far. And given that, one could shift 4 activities that we end up doing in different locations to doing it from home or from office. One was shopping. Shopping clearly went from physical to digital, and in the process, we had home deliveries. Work also shifted. Rather than working in the offices, especially the white collar work or even blue collar work to some extent, like a digital technology work, special effects studios, you could migrate out into the home place, for example. Education. Clearly, I'm an educator and we all learned how to teach online using Zoom technology in this case or any other technology. And then the last one, of course, we did was leisure, all the leisurely activities like going to movies, for example, or going to concerts or whatever they are, we began to do it at home. So fundamentally, the supermarket came home, universities came home, employment came home, and of course, all of the top artists began to realize that using the internet is a big, big opportunity. They can be in many, many places at the same time and get much larger audiences. I think this shift is permanent. What was happening gradually in terms of e-commerce, emails, etc., I think we have a permanent shift. And I'll take one key example to show you that in the case of visiting physicians, which we could not do in person, physician had to come to my house through what we call telemedicine or televisits. I was astounded that we never thought that we will not feel, see, touch, meet the physician. But today people are very much used to doing a Zoom call with their physician as opposed to go in person. Last year, I'm told in 2020, there were 1 billion, 1 billion, not million, 1,000 million televisit calls made in the US. It's that big. And today people say, why would I get dressed, drive to the a physician's clinic, fighting for the parking space, and go to the office where there may be other patients with diseases that I don't know? I would rather do the call on Zoom. So the doctors are having appointments much longer time period, much later on a digital visit than in a personal visit. I think this fundamental change is impacting countries like India even more dramatically because today we are able to do e-commerce and home delivery all the way to smaller and smaller towns than ever before. It's creating an alternate infrastructure. What we now have are what I would call digital streets and digital highways. What is the implication or planning for this one? Basically, it simply says that we'll have to do digital transformation at the home level, surprisingly. And you saw the data that all of the home PCs, for example, record sales of laptops, record sales of anything that's digital in the infrastructure at home, definitely happening at the employment level or the institutions, educational institutions or enterprises, but it is having a massive impact on the government. And this is where, in many ways, India is ahead because we basically skipped the PC revolution and went straight into the cell phone revolution. So today we have a massive presence on the digital infrastructure. Everything government does business with us or we do business with government, compliance-wise, GST, for example, or tax or whatever it is, has to be done online. Similarly, visa and all this thing is now online first and physical second if necessary. I think this is a very key change and we'll talk about its impact. Second thing it's creating is a supply chain issues. The pent-up demand is incredible, especially for things that we postponed. The demand is coming up with a much greater level. As Mr. Moitra mentioned, for example, pent-up demand is at a higher price points even. People are simply wanting to splurge or spend money in ways that we never thought was possible. But it's creating a supply chain havoc right now, as we have seen, especially as those who come by ships, for example. The ships like Mundra are clogged. Same thing around here, the ships LA Harbor, for example, or in my case, the Savannah port, which is a big one, they're all getting clogged. I think it will result into ultimately saying that we cannot rely on one place who will supply to the rest of the world for any product or service. Let's have a distributed supply chain. I think there's going to be a massive change in supply chain where there are multiple sources and one can shift the capacity from one to the other to manage it, and they will be all networked properly because we can network today at more affordable cost using cloud computing technology and basically cell phone or very affordable devices. Pent-up demand is the one that we need to watch in the short run, which says that the economy may come back much faster as the government opens up more opportunities for the safety taken into account, not having a COVID wave one more time, for example, but at the same time functioning more and more back into the real world. Second area that I would like to talk about is more focus on countries like India. China is a middle income now, and also things what's happening in other emerging economies, because that's the foundation for something about the geopolitical dynamics. Basically, most of the emerging economies are now going into branded products and branded services. So far, more than 65% of all consumption in emerging economies, including India, is unbranded products. And it is sold through unbranded or unorganized retailing. I think we are shifting permanently to have all the lentils, rice, flour, whatever it is, branded more and more. We have a new middle class that's very brand conscious, which increases the quality assurance, for example, less adulteration, for example. And there are many, many advantages of going from unbranded to branded products. Creates an economic activity because when I make things at home, the GDP contribution is only the raw materials that I buy. But when I buy outside, the value is about 4 or 5 times more because raw material converted into a consumable product is about 4 or 5 times. So it creates an enormous economic uplift in the process. So we think that branded to unbranded to branded is a very key initiative, and governments can encourage more and more. How can we make products more branded by regulation, by policy, for example? And the same thing is true from unorganized sector to organized sector. In India, in unorganized sector, we have like 9 middlemen from the producer to the consumer. It's such a very inefficient system. Each one has to have a margin, each one has to have a stock the product. And therefore, how can we go from one-step distribution to two-step distribution, a wholesaler and a retailer? And that is happening clearly now with the more and more people buying from organized retailers, such as, for example, in India, we have quite a few. You have the Reliance Retail, for example. You have Metro Retail, for example. Marks and Spencer companies are there. They're all becoming more and more, some shopping centers in the process. But I'm talking about grocery stores in the second and third tier cities. I think this is going to make significant change about the future of the world lying post-pandemic with the emerging economies. Emerging economies will gain the attention because they have markets now in their hands, especially large economy like India. In fact, if you analyze all the data in consumer products, especially, India is like number 1 and number 2 consumer in the world. Number 1 consumer obviously is China, number 2 is India. Because of the large market size of the consumer markets, it's going to create a spark in everything in terms of supply chain for the products, the raw materials, starting with the consumer and then going backwards into the industrial institutional. Which leads me to my third point I'll make quickly, which is a part of the geopolitics. Surprisingly, as of 1987, the world was dominated by 15 nations, Canada, US, 2 Northern American nations, 12 common market countries, and Japan. 75% of the world GDP was made in those countries, and 45% of the trade was among those countries. Balance of the trade was usually getting raw materials from their former colonies, somehow or the other. That is now getting divided into a new triad power, as we call it, which is the rise of China and India, US still continues the journey. And in this new triad power, the old triad power of Japan, Western Europe, which is EU now, and America, there was a complete harmony established about the economic policy, political agenda, for example, and even the military alliance. US defeated Japan and Germany, so everybody complied with a common architecture. We created institutions like IMF and World Bank, but also United Nations to take our disputes, and we take care of the disputes without going to war. That was the intent, that we should never have another war like World War II. The politics have changed dramatically. With the new triad power, there is no consensus about which ideology is stressing, definitely aligning more and more toward the US and US as a magnet in terms of its own ecosystem, strategic alliance there. And there are 2-3 consequences that I think are very important for India's future. I wrote a paper more recently based upon my lecture in 2020, why India will become more and more strategic nation in the new world order. I cannot speak about all the elements that one, but I'll take 2-3 key points. We always studied Rudyard Kipling, who came out with this notion, a brilliant British person born in India, very loyal to India, that East is East and the West is West, and the twain shall never meet. He's dead wrong, by the way. He's not only dead, but he's wrong. You've seen the westernization of the Asian culture, essentially Korea, Japan, China, India. But now we see for the first time Easternization of the world. Spirituality is right there. Buddhism is gaining popularity among the advanced economies, mostly white Christians. And of course, yoga has become now popular among everybody, not just among Indian population, yoga and meditation, which is why this association that we have makes a lot of impact. Soft power of India is now coming into the Western world in a much more significant and a grassroots level than ever before. Second thing is that out of nowhere, India will become the service capital of the world, as China became the manufacturing capital in the last 30 years. Biggest resource India has is not just the agricultural resource, which we are very good, industrial resources we are quite good, but it is the human capital. So if you cannot take the workers out of India as invited guests, H-1B visa in America, or guest worker passes, or permanent resident in Canada or in Australia, work has to come to India. All the IT service companies will find that India is the place because there's a talent out there, very affordable, and it is not accessible through China anymore. So India is becoming a sourcing capital for services industries, not just IT industries, but accounting, finance, anything that has to do with that can be digitized, can have a professional certified service is being done more and more in India. India also will become a sourcing alternative to China. World realized during the pandemic that the dependence on China is so enormous, even for mundane products, my daily necessities, such as, for example, microwave oven. 92% of all the production is only in China. Oxygen concentrators, more recently with the whole COVID phenomenon all over the world, only place you can get them was China again. So everybody believes that we need alternate sourcing for many product categories, pharmaceuticals, of course, but garments, automotive components. I can list you about a dozen major industries in India which are very capable of going export, but it has to have an export mindset. First thing, export mindset is that your quality assurance has to be high. Second thing is that we need to learn how to brand the product. India has great products and great companies, but they don't know how to brand and promote and go abroad. The soft power of a nation lies not just in culture and language and philosophy, but also in the brand names of the companies of that country's origin, like India. Japan learned after World War II. South Korea learned the same way. Taiwan did at one time. China is doing it. I think we need to create world admired products out of India fact, people take pride and say, and in the pride of the nation goes up. So in this realignment, very clearly, I see India and US aligning significantly, both for security purposes, space programs, lots of defense related industries, but also consumer products and services. So I see India's future becoming much brighter, and therefore the next economic activity between now and the next election would be very important. I'm also finding in my research, it's unrelated to today's topic, but it is related, that surprisingly, for example, if you want to reform a nation, one term is fine. But if you want to transform a nation, you need about 14, 15 years of continuous leadership, either at a party level or at the leadership level, pretty much. So I do hope that, in fact, India's journey continues upwardly, and we're doing fantastically well in everything we do, whether it's space or vaccines or whatever it is. So I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Sir, I really feel very, very guilty that I'll have to do this very, very unpleasant job. And I must give to Indira's credit that, she has got me on a hangman's job as for hangman of time. And as she expects me to do that, which is very, very difficult. But with such people like Ashish Chauhanji, you sir, we are good here, Kumar sir also. It's a very difficult job I'm doing, but it's very important because sir, you mentioned a couple of points, and I thought that it's important that we run through the points so that it becomes easy for Kumar sir also, because Kumar sir is going to take it from the last point where you mentioned about the alignment of relationships between India and the United States. And you seem that future for India is bright, and you talk about not only reform but transform, and that's how it ended. And I think, sir, you when you started you really made a very, very definitive comment that when we are talking about the changes which the COVID pandemic has brought, you said that the movement has been from physical to digital on the slew factor, because I just made an acronym of what you said with regard to shopping, with regard to leisure, to education and work. And you said that this change is permanent, so it's not going back once again from where we have come. So this is to stay. You spoke about the digital transformation. You spoke about the supply chain. The most important message, sir, you had is that what would work in the other's favor could also work in others' favor. And your word of the message for all of us was that, look, you cannot buy from one source only. You'll have to look for various sources with regard to the change that you said. You very, very intelligently used emerging economy and didn't get into the debate of emerging markets, but because that could open a Pandora's box. So you carefully avoided that word, super intelligent and erudite that you are. You decided not to do that, but you dearly left 2 points out there on the movement from the unbranded to the branded. And in that context, you mentioned a new middle class. My question, which I'm just leaving with you, sir, and Kumar sir can also take a cue from there, which will come back later on also. Now, when we talk about the middle class, sir, so Pew Research has recently conducted a research all across the globe, and they have said that the number of middle income group, because class is a very, very confusing concept, because normally we use the word class and income group interchangeably. So if I'm to use the word middle income group, so Pew Research also clearly states that the number is currently down to 99 crores from 116 crores, because that's a challenge, and I'm sure that we're going to do that. You also, when you spoke about the intermediaries, and you said that from one to the other there could be 4 or 5 intermediaries within the chain. You mentioned about certain things, and there are other organizations also which are breaking into those chains. But the question that I leave you, sir, which possibly you could answer later, is that has this chain created lot of jobs, maybe underemployed though, but has it created jobs? And will it take time for
Yeah.
those people, because they may not having those skill sets, to move from one set to the other set, while the consumer benefits? This particular area is of concern. This is a question you mentioned about the triad part, and I'm so grateful, because I've been associated with I've been with NASCOM, and I was a part of the thing which was handling the H1B for that, as well as a part of the team.
Right.
And so when you're talking about the human capital as a strength, though you also mentioned later that the soft power cannot be on culture and civilization only, it will also have to be the brand, which I completely agree with you. But sir, don't you also think that India possibly cannot just survive on the labor cost arbitrage? It will have to be value addition.
Yeah.
So when our finance minister or commerce minister or prime minister visits Kumar sir's country, or your country for that matter, so Ashish Chaudhary and I stay in the same country. He's in Mauritius now, but we stay in the same country. So when they go, I think, can they remove the word labor cost arbitrage from their list of offering, and could they do a value addition? Would be a great question that I leave you. We would
Yeah.
all be very happy to hear on that. And on the Indo-US alignment and this thing, which I think I will request Kumar sir also to be mentioning that. Sir, we also see, sir, maybe because of paucity of time, you could have also mentioned that. Sir, we see a dangerous trend across the globe, and which is protectionism. We see all countries under some garb are raising their protectionist wall, and India cannot also escape, go scot free, because PLI is also one sort of a protection given to that. We have also seen the Americans going for protection. The world is becoming very protectionist. So I think, sir, we will come to that. But I invite one of the top persons who is negotiating the relationship between the oldest democracy and the largest democracy of the world, the Indo-US sort of thing. And I also welcome Jason sir. Good evening, Jason sir, to this. And so let me give, because all of you are such rich biodata, it makes the work so difficult for me. I did not carry any chits to my examination hall. Normally I knew it, but I'm just taking the advantage of a paper because it is so rich. So A.B. Kumar sir is the president and CEO of the Indian American International Chamber of Commerce. He has has a distinguished career, and he's also the chairman of KMF Investment Group as a personal entity, and over more than 50 years, but with a missionary zeal, he has been doing voluntary work. And people who we normally use, Ashish Chauhanji might slightly take a bit of offense to this, but if I'm allowed to use the word subaltern, so the subaltern category of business, or the subaltern category of people, Kumar Sahas take a lot of interest in trying to ensure the subalterns of business and the subalterns of the society get mainstream. So, sir, I really welcome you to this great program, and sir, you start, but I think the points which were made by Jagdish Seth sir also, and Ashish Chauhan sir, particularly when Jagdish sir ended, he spoke about that the circumstances are going to bring India and US together. So I think during your discourse, sir, we would be very happy if you could enlighten us on this. But again, I would say for the first time, I've been also lenient on that. I'm just going to get into your time, but 600 seconds is going to be the first thing which is available to you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. First, let me thank my good friend and AAYM chairman, Indranil Basu Ray, and our distinguished moderator, Mr. Maitra, and Ayandril Datta. She has done a fantastic job as the exceptional executive director. Gaurav Singh, I'm Sheikh, and Chaitanya Patil, and my esteemed friends, speakers, Jagdish Sheth, Ashish Kumar Chauhan, and my fellow contributor, Jason Michael Anderson, a former senior US diplomat turned entrepreneur and a successful biotech executive, and who served across Asia. Jason is also a board member of IAICC. And the same way, Ashish and Jagdish are also on our board. First of all, I want to say a few things that I'm not going to, because I prepared something, and both Jagdish and Ashish took away a lot of points. I don't need to repeat that. As some countries in the world are slowly preparing to return to normalcy with increasing vaccination rates, a majority of countries, mainly India included, of course, have imposed tight restrictions to stop spread of the virus. I have been here in India for the last 1 week, and I have gone through three RT PCR tests already. So that means they are really taking good care of their people, and I appreciate that. And I have no problem in the doing the test, because I think it's good for all of us. The economic crisis could, with the outbreaks, but if the outbreak persists, the economic growth could suffer in the future. Especially, we don't know what exactly is going to happen, because as our good friend Ashish Kumar Chauhan was mentioning, UK has, in the UK it has increased. In Mumbai, now if I have to travel from Mumbai to Bangalore or from Kerala to Bangalore, I will have to take a RT-PCR test again. So the pandemic has already plunged most countries into a deep economic downturn. In fact, even before the pandemic, in these developing economies experienced weaker growth rates, but now the pandemic has made these economies face even harder challenges. Any efforts to control this situation will require global coordination and cooperation from world powers. As rightly Jagdish Bhai was mentioning, as rightly he said, supply chain is going to play a major role in this one. There is a need for specific economic-oriented strategies and actions that could affect and alleviate the economic damage and lessen the pandemic impact. Mainly developed countries with their global influence have potential to support underdeveloped countries to achieve their public health and robust economic recovery goals. Major ongoing issues due to pandemic is going to have a growing uncertainty, weakening healthcare systems, loss of trade, and, for example, the UN the recent UN World Tourism Organization states the international tourism associated with sector suffered an estimated $2.4 trillion because of the pandemic things, and it is not going to be covered in the recent months. It will take a few more, maybe a couple of more years to make it up for that one. In its report, the International Monetary Fund labeled the pandemic impact, the decline in global economic activity, as the Great Lockdown, which Jagdish Bhai mentioned it fairly well. The IMF has cautioned that renewed waves of infections and new variants of the virus could pose concerns for the outlook. These things, again, it comes back to one major impact that we can have. If we have a global understanding and a global effort to stop this kind of pandemic, it works. Otherwise, it's not going to work. One country or few countries cannot make a very big difference on that. The Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development released an updated forecast in September 2021 about the pandemic as well. The OECD has estimated that global economic growth has declined by 3.4% in 2020. That's a huge decline. I mean, it's a very substantial decline. And when you look at these things, And when you put the whole thing together, what are we going to need to do? Again, it comes back to the better relationship between major countries, US, India, China, and other countries. Don't ignore China because it's a powerful country. We don't want to ignore that. At the same time, India has become even more powerful because of the uncertainties of the world. And India plays a major, major role in the future of world economy. And Ashish Bhai mentioned that one very well. And I think we are going to do that. What are we doing about US, India, and the rest of the world relations? First of all, I want you to know that our chamber has done a number of initiatives. We are not the regular chamber which has annual award ceremony, invite some people, give an award, and walk out, and that's the end of it, a banquet dinner. What we have done is, number one, what we did, it was announced in 2018, I believe, by then Commerce Secretary Ross. US brought India to STA 1 category, which is Strategic Trade Authorization Category 1, which means it belongs to the same category as NATO countries. And by bringing that, what has happened is it doesn't have to go through the middlemen in most cases, especially in artificial intelligence and the defense procurement and things like that. And that is a huge, huge success. And there are a lot of companies which can make use of that one. And another aspect of that is that, I would strongly recommend the SMEs in India participate in conjunction and as partners with other companies in the United States to take benefits of not only the economic development and also the new program that President Biden has initiated on the infrastructure development. There is a huge need for us to get into that one. So what are we doing about US-India relations? US-India relations is at its best. And Prime Minister Modi has done a fantastic job during the last two presidencies under President Obama as well as President Trump, and it's going to continue under President Biden. The reason why US needs India most? India is a dependable partner for United States. The United States needs India, India needs United States. So how are we at the lower levels? We need to put all our efforts to bring these two countries even more closer. I remember the days when even Finance Minister Manmohan Singh came, he couldn't get an appointment with Nick Brady, the Treasury Secretary. Now, today, we don't need all those things. India has such a good respect by US government and vice versa. And one thing that Prime Minister Modi said attracted me during this period, when he came to Washington to address US Congress, I was one of the 25 fortunate people to be invited for breakfast in the Speaker's office, where I welcomed the Prime Minister at the request of the Speaker. And there was Jeff Bezos, Indra Nooyi, Ajay Banga, and a lot of other good people there. And when he said, what I really want, this is what he told us, and he said that in the US Congress when he gave the speech. I don't want anything from the United States. I want United States to be an equal partner. We want partnership, not handovers. I think that is where India is heading. India is going to be a great leader. We have got great leaders in business. Ashish Kumar, Chauhan is but an example of that one. He has brought this Bombay Stock Exchange. It used to be Bombay Stock Exchange. Now it's known as BSE. He has brought it to nearly $4 trillion, and it has done superb job over the last few years under his leadership. One thing that our honorable friend, Dr. Maitra, didn't say, he is also the Chancellor of Allahabad Hindu University. Thank you. And I hand over my speech to my colleague, Jason Anderson. Jason, go ahead.
Good evening, good morning to everyone on this call. I'll be very brief, just a couple minutes. I thank KV for inviting me to say a few words. I'm here with him in Mumbai, visiting with members of the Indian business investment and high technology life sciences community as we talk about how to better integrate and further improve the quality of life science interactions between the United States and India, especially as we emerge from this current chapter in the pandemic. I want to kind of personalize my comments for the people that are listening to this webinar. I think all of you, if we sit back and think of it, those of us of a certain age and such, recognize that we have just lived through probably one of the greatest achievements in human history. The fact that our scientific and medical communities across the globe were able to develop these classes of vaccines and therapeutics in the time that they did is on par, if not greater, than putting a man on the moon or any of the other technological achievements that we've experienced, certainly in our lifetimes. And the fact of the matter is, if not for the advances in genomics and the advances in sequencing technologies and high throughput bioinformatics that all have just been developed really recently in the last 10 to 15 years, we would probably be without these classes of drugs and therapeutics. And so the pandemic, as terrible as it is and remains, visited us at a time in human history where we were first equipped with the weapons and tools necessary to defeat it quickly and efficiently. And I think for me, going forward in this topic of this webinar is to think about the impacts that we can expect as a global community going forward as a result of the COVID experience. My optimism continues to increase that we will see an acceleration in the quality of growth and the quality of the growth in areas that can be affected by the life sciences. And that'll span everything from clinical care to agriculture to methodologies to use biology to improve climate change, the tools that we can bring to address climate change and these other existential threats to us as a species. For those of you that have your cameras on, I'll personalize it for you a little bit. This was a photo taken just 3 hours ago here in Mumbai. That's KV in the middle and me on the side, because we had to go get tested in order to cross state lines here in India for our next series of visits in Karnataka that take place day after tomorrow. In that hospital, there were 17 ICU beds that were registered. All 17 ICU beds were critical care COVID patients. And I asked the attending nurse where the trend line was going. She said, we're holding steady, but we're seeing an uptick. And that's reflected across the world right now. The United Kingdom certainly is at the forefront of this. We are by no means out of this fight with COVID. And what we need to do is to ensure that we continue to engage in public policies, transnational policies, interstate policies that ensure our people are protected and safe, and that economic commerce, the hard lessons learned through our mistakes, unintended mistakes with national governments at certain times, that we can preserve commerce and preserve our quality of life as we deal with this disease, which will become a constant in our life. This is not going to go away. And so my optimism, and I'll end my comments on this, my optimism comes from this, and this is why I'm enthusiastic about the future of the life sciences here in India and in the United States. For those of you, listening, this is the third great, for many of you, certainly those of you that are as old as I am or KV, this is the third technological transformation that you are experiencing in your lifetime. The atomic age, the digital age, and now you're in the age of biotechnology. And the speed at which the biotechnology will affect your life will be far faster, greater, and more profound than those previous two technological periods of time. And as but one example, I would just simply suggest that a country with such pride as India has within information technology, that the advances in how DNA can be used for encoding of information and such, all of these great innovations that are at the fore, I believe many of those discoveries and many of those new innovations will be born out of India and through interaction with the United States. And hopefully it's our two peoples that will drive those sort of applications into the future. And so with great pride, I thank you for the opportunity to give a few comments on this and echo what my esteemed friends have said this evening with regard to what I believe is a general theme of optimism. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you both, Kumar sir and Jason, and I think I didn't have to raise a finger, but the common thread which did bind all of us, all the speakers, all of you distinguished people this evening was that your optimism, and I think that's going to be very, very contagious. I could make out because I see that you're all smiles and everybody is all smiles, which is great. And when you're saying all those things, I was just remembering that old song that I don't want thunder, I don't want rain. God, give us one good day. So I think that's the message we are looking for. That one good day in our life. But I will start with Jason, because Jason, what has happened? We have let our guards down. Because the festivities and all those things, we did let our guards down. And since many people are vaccinated twice, we are of the opinion that we have bid goodbye to COVID. So we have let our masks down. We take part in a lot of festivities. The governments are doing their very best with regard to their outreach programs, to be educating people about that. But as we were talking about pent up demand, when Jagdish sir was answering about pent up demand, there were also a lot of pent up feelings about just going out, right? And the most difficult thing that all of us are encountering, I've asked, we are all used to hugging people and shaking hands, right? And this is a very, very difficult thing, because now they're saying you get back to your old Indian namaskar style. Now it's difficult for us to exactly go back to that. So, but we are trying. Now, once we are through with that, I think Kumar sir. He spoke about the STA category 1, and he also spoke about the OECD forecast and the UNCTAD, particularly with reference to tourism. It is obvious that tourism is going to be down because people are not traveling. It's going to be down. But when Jagdish sir, because I think it's very good. I would like to thank Oendrila ma'am, because he got both the people on the screen. Jagdish sir on to my right. Not that he's a rightist, and not that Kemi Kumar sir is a leftist, but it's coincidentally he's left on my screen and Jagdish sir is to the right of my screen. Right? They could also interchange their positions as well on several things. But I think there's a very, very interesting sort of a thing which I saw, that Jagdish sir made special mention with regard to pointers. Ashish Chauhan sir was also talking about that India has really done well, and I think Kumar sir said that yes, India is dependable. I think the most important word that Kumar sir mentions, and we have no reason to disbelieve Kumar sir. No reason to disbelieve, absolutely, right? So, sir, may I ask you, when you use the word dependable, if I may ask you, sir, how do you define dependable, sir? If you could please do that, because that's very important to the speakers, because they are going to all be getting back and answering the questions. But for the interest of this, of all everyone, could you define dependable, sir?
Yes. Before, in the politics in India, when a politician says something, it was not dependable. But
Right.
when Mr. Modi says it
Right.
is something that he wants to do, he will do. That is,
Right.
I believe him. 100% dependable,
Right.
because the person who is at the helm. In fact, when I was invited by media in Los Angeles, shortly after the 2014 election of Prime Minister Modi, and the reporter asked me, "What do you think today India is going to celebrate?" I said, "India got its independence on the day that Modi ji was elected as Prime Minister." That is the dependability that I'm talking about. I am not by the way, I'm not a Gujarati. I'm not an RSS or anything. Okay. But I tell you, I'm an independent. Okay. And for me to say and admire our Prime Minister, it is because he is dependable. And India is dependable because of our Prime Minister.
Sir, I would like to thank you, because when you said I'm not a Gujarati, right, you almost cleared my stance, because Ashish sir, when you were speaking, right, I am from Bengal, and but I'm not a communist, right? So you almost acted as my counsel, sir, when you said that. But jokes apart, sir, I think what you said, Ashish sir also said that. So you said that it is more about an individual who is bringing that feeling of dependability. Now, if I may just shift to Jagdish sir here, I would be very happy if Ashish Chauhan sir is also brought in the screen, because he's required in the screen. May I request to be done? Now, I would like to ask Jagdish sir on this. Sir, how far, KV Kumar sir, you can't get angry with me, sir, and you will have
No,
to
no,
offer
no,
me
no,
a
no.
cup
Please,
of
please,
coffee.
please.
All right.
That's fine. No,
Now,
no.
Jagdish sir, Ashish sir and Kumar sir both spoke about a gentleman which I'm not in disagreement, but I would like to act as a devil's advocate in this program, sir. And I would like to ask you, can you really substantiate, if you will be a lawyer for both Ashish sir and KV Kumar sir this evening, when they spoke about one individual as the mascot of dependability, would you only leave it at that, sir? Or would you like to add some more points about India being a very, very dependable partner? Sir, Jagdish sir, please. Jagdish sir?
He didn't want to answer.
Jagdish sir? Hello? Are you there? Jagdish?
Oh,
Sir?
he's
Sir?
back. He's back.
Jagdish sir? Can you hear me,
Yeah.
Jagdish sir? Sir, did you hear my question?
I can hear you now, right? Yes.
Yeah. So what I mentioned was
I
that,
can answer it, yeah.
yeah, please, sir. Please, sir.
I think the world has become more unpredictable,
Right.
and the dependability depends not so much on you as much as the changing context.
Right.
Populism is everywhere, for example.
Right.
Governments are changing a lot faster in many countries than in India. I think dependability comes in terms of some basic belief systems that you believe in, and you continue your journey accordingly. In that regard, surprise, India has a good score. India as a world matters. We have been consistent in our policy approach, and I would slightly disagree that while
Jagdish sir, can you hear? Are you there, Jagdish sir? Jagdish sir, are you there? Have we lost connect with Jagdish sir?
I'm afraid he's frozen.
I would not like to believe that he's frozen, but I could. Yeah, of course. Ashish sir, Jagdish sir, are you back? Are you back? Are you back? When you
Ashish should take the answer.
yeah, but when you Jason mentioned that you got frozen. Was it a very strategic move on your part to get frozen at the time when I asked you a question, or would you would you agree with Ashish sir and Kumar sir also on this point? It's a very important question, and the answer we expect from you, sir. That is there more to a man? Is there this thing you're talking about populism? Would you go on, sir?
I'm afraid he's
I think
not
this
going to be able to
question.
answer your question.
No, I've understood. This question is not going through.
Yeah, that's fine.
This question is not going through. I go to Ashish Chauhan, sir. Sir, tell me one thing. You are moving across countries, and when you do that, what's the smell that you get about India as a country, sir?
See, I'll tell you, I have moved across countries for last 30 years.
Right, but
when I used to go to when I used to visit US or Europe in 1993, 94, there used to be one sort of one news item every 15 days about cows roaming on roads and some snake charmers photographs, and that used to be the interest about India. Today, when I go to US, they are worried about Indians taking jobs, and a large portion of life is about services. I think Professor Seth mentioned about the services. Services, basically, other than the barbers, I think everything will move to India. And even if it is labor arbitrage, the labor arbitrage between $6,000 per annum in US and $2,000 per in India over next 20 years will be sufficient. You don't even have to develop any new products. By the time even barbering also will come down to India. So idea is it's nothing to do with one individual, but that one individual also has helped India. I mean, I used to go to across the world about last 30 years, and nowhere we would get any importance at all. Last 8 years, wherever I go, people ask me about leadership, India taking leadership, right? And I think it is a subtle message to all of us in India who hate ourselves. In India, we are completely full of inferiority complex, and we hate ourselves, we hate our leaders. We are what I call slumdog millionaire world. Outsiders may believe in assuming by looking at that movie that all Indians stay in slums, but Indians want to stay in slums. Even if we might be sitting in a good place, we somehow want to hate ourselves. And then slowly, especially the intelligentsia has to come out of that. We tend to worry a lot about what other people think about us. I mean, their thinking about us is improved, but more importantly, we need to basically continue to do what we are doing in terms of the IT, in terms of the new techs, whether it is virtual reality, whether it is 3D printing, whether it is space technology, almost biotechnology. We are reading the world in all these areas, and it is not that one person has got it done. It has not happened in 8 years. It has happened in last 5,000 years.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Last 2,000 years, we lost the art of winning. It is coming back, I think. I think we must give ourselves credit that last 8 years, has given us that art of winning, and still we'll continue to hate ourselves, especially coming from Calcutta. I am half Calcuttan, and we love to hate ourselves. Let's continue to hate ourselves, but also rejoice in our achievements.
Right. Thank you, Ashish sir. I have a question for Kumar sir now. So the question is that, when we are talking about jobs, and you mentioned about the small and medium enterprises, and it's not COVID only. Ashish sir is here, Jagdish sir is here, Kumar sir and Jason also takes a lot of interest in Indian economy as well. Now, it's not only COVID, but prior to that also we had seen that the for the last 8 quarters prior to COVID, the GDP was moving on a very southward direction. It has been happening like that, and COVID has accentuated process. Gradually things are becoming better. The companies are trying to get back. They are discussing whether the hybrid models are going to be good, whether they will do that. But as far as the jobs which have been lost, and particularly with regard to the small and medium enterprises who have suffered those losses, sir, uh, do you think, sir, that there could be return to normalcy, particularly on the job front, with regard to SMEs? And when I say SMEs, sir, Jagdish sir, when I talk about SMEs, the way I'm talking about SMEs is not the way Europe and US is looking at SMEs. Because when I talk about SMEs, India, the SME Act defines the SMEs, right? And it's much more smaller in sizes, though it contributes a lot to the exports, to the employment. So do you think, Kumar sir, that is it return to normalcy possible as far as
Okay.
jobs are concerned for these SMEs, sir?
I have an answer. I tell you, since last April, and all my board members, of course, Jagdish also knows, I have traveled 27,000 miles by car. I have driven. I have helped hundreds of small business owners who could
Right.
not fill out an application form for EIDLs, the loan applications, PPP loans, the employee salary and loans from the
Yeah.
SBA. We have done this one. One of the things that is happening, unfortunately, is that the some of the funding that is going from the government, it is hurting the economy, because the money that is going, it needs to go. It needs to go to the right corners. But it is going to the places where the employees, some of the employees, not all, but some of the employees of small businesses are beginning to stay home and get more money rather than working. And that is affecting the restaurants, the retailers, and everyone. Jagdish Bhai, you can confirm that one. And this is really affecting, because I know firsthand, because I have traveled between last April and this July. I drove more than 27,000 miles around the United States, going from state to state. In fact, I visited, Dr. Jagdish Shetty's home state 14 times in the last 1 year. And one of the things that I believe, that there should be incentive for small businesses to employ and go forward. That will help. But if the governments are going to give funding and helping, giving more money if they stay home, that's not going to help.
Thank you, sir.
Let me add. Can I just
Jagdish
add?
sir, I'm coming to you. Exactly, I'm coming to you on this. On a lighter note, sir mentioned that he traveled 27,000 miles this thing, but he never had the problem of not having a shirt on his back or not a penny to his name. I think there could be many people who didn't have a shirt on their back or a penny to their name, right? And the condition, now the point which is happening is the governments are also starved of funds. It's not that the governments are in a very good position, be it the state government or be it the central government, because during Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee's time, one fantastic thing happened called the introduction of the FRBM Act, the Financial Responsibility Budgetary Management Act. And that is why which binds the governments also to stay with the fiscal deficit. So the vaccination spends and all those things have been having budgets haywire. Would you please tell me, because when Kumar sir was mentioning that they are not going out, not contributing to the economy in that manner, would you have a prescription for the government? Because when KV Kumar sir was talking about incentivizing, now KV Kumar sir used the word incentivizing. Now, does incentivizing, if you have understood or the way you or Ashish sir looks at it, is it fiscal incentivization, or it could be a combination of fiscal and not fiscal incentivization, sir? Jagdish,
I
sir.
think you are right. Look, incentivization is essential for people who need it. Let
Right,
me
sir.
be very clear about that. People at the lowest end needs help. We need to help them. There's no second thing about that. Okay? And we need to give more help for those people. But for those who are in the in between, okay, that's what I was talking about.
Jagdish sir, about the middle tier, would you please clarify on the middle tier, because they were contributing to the consumption on a larger scale, right? The middle tier. Now that consumption per se has also got affected, and it's the demands have got constrained, right? It's not a supply side issue in India; it's hugely a demand side issue in India. Now, sir, how do you get things back to normal, right? Because banks are also not in a position to be lending money because, they're stressed assets. Things are improving, though, for the insolvency and bankruptcy code, and all those things are improving. But there are serious issues. Would you please throw light on that, sir, on the consumption front and the job front, sir?
Yeah, both of them, and I'll take the SME sector in a moment also.
Right, sir.
First of all, the next generation of young Indians really are outsourcing everything. The biggest outsourcing in India is not the IT services, but the young family does not know how to cook anymore.
Absolutely.
They don't know how to clean the house.
Absolutely right. Absolutely. And the cloud kitchens, sir.
Exactly. So that outsourcing for the next generation is creating commercial opportunities. And the next generation, people who are in their, let's say, teens and the young people are very much used to electronic technologies, the cell phones, smartphones. They are doing more outsourcing, which is going to create a fuel from basic needs in the society. Okay? So to me, it's not the current generation or the past generation which is going to change, although they are changing rapidly, surprisingly, but it's the next generation. So looking from that viewpoint, it's going to continue. Same thing is true in the US. For example, we are eating out 1.5 meals out of 3 meals per day away from home. Right. And 1.5 meals that we eat at home, more 50% is all home delivered some fashion, either to ready to prepare or ready to eat even, for example. So preparing themselves is going away. They think their time is more valuable to do something else.
And the QSRs are also doing very well, the quick service restaurants.
Absolutely. In the process, the whole value chain is shifting in the process.
Yes.
Creating organized manufacturing, organizing supply chain in some fashion. But SME sector in India is where I'm focusing quite a lot, actually, through my institute. 4 areas need to lift it in a different direction. SME sector is very low tech. It has to become high tech. I'll give a quick example. The automobile that they build today is smarter than the worker. If I'm a repair person for that automobile, I cannot use the oil change. In my days, what we did with mechanical car, I have to learn computers. By definition, my wages have to go up in the process. A technician, therefore, we need to have a lot of vocational technical education, not in what you do right now, but with future technology, which is where government comes in a very big way in terms of giving. Singapore does it all the time, for example, that you have to have a mandatory training of your people, and that can be funded by the government through whatever mechanism you do. So to me, the national education policy actually has a strong emphasis, but it needs to create a whole infrastructure. How will you do it, which we can come into? So that's clearly one. So how do you make your worker from a low wage to a high wage its responsibility is both by the employer and the nation, which is one thing, significant change. Second thing, we don't know how to do branding of our products. There are wonderful cases. Let me give you some quick examples. I'm sorry to take time out. But if you just take out of nowhere, Patanjali becomes the largest, one of the largest consumer products companies in Ayurveda. Ayurveda is a low-tech technology. It all depends upon one person's expertise who has learned, today I can modernize it. And Patanjali has crossed 2,000, 3,000 crores, almost knocking the doors of Unilever, which is unthinkable. Not just Patanjali, but take, for example, the Haldirams. These people are wonderful in the way they have figured out, okay? And so we have to do more and more automation, more use of technology to make the workers smarter than ever before, not only just productive, and increase the wages in the process. So that's clearly one factor. Second factor is that we don't know, as I mentioned, how to create brands and create excitement for the brands. Now, some people are doing quite well. I mean, for example, Dabur brand has done quite well, but unfortunately, many other cases we have a tremendous potential. I'm very fond of. I mean, I'm so fond of India because every street corner has a recipe. What if I take that recipe, mechanize it, globalize it, scale it up? I can take a local idea into a global arena. We see people lining up to eat those panwalas recipes or mithaiwalas recipes, you know.
Absolutely.
This unbranded products can be made into branded quality products and exported the worldwide. It's a very large opportunity. The third area is very strongly, we have to educate our SME sector about the global orientation and the global mindset, both from an opportunity viewpoint, but more importantly, competition will come to India, especially if you're a mid-sized company. Whether you're a diamond manufacturer, for example, or whether an automotive component maker, or anybody, let's say 1,000, 2,000 crore company, is not going to survive the way they are doing it right now. So there's a challenge which unfortunately they don't understand. They have to have a succession planning, either professionalize the company, even though ownership stays with you, just like big companies do. Very much, I think that's a very strong need. Backbone of the nation is the SME sector.
Correct, sir. Correct. Sir, I would have gone on and on, but I'm constantly getting a message now. But I would, but I will have to give. I'll have to ask Ashish sir one particular thing, because I think there is a message of Kumar sir and Jagdish sir for Ashish sir, because Ashish sir, you work with the industry and the people very, very closely, sir. Sir, what message would you take? And Jason also gave a lot of messages, and when he spoke about the atomic age, the digital age, and the age of biotechnology, I was almost remembering a German physicist whom I would not like to name, who won a Nobel, and with regard to the atomic bomb and all those things, and a particular gentleman had to be sent from US to handle that issue. Later, he introduced the allies to the stockpiles as well. But to get back to you, sir, Ashish sir, what one last word on this would you have? What is the message, sir, you're going to carry from what Jagdish sir and Kumar sir and Jason said? And what is the task cut out for people like you? How are we going to take the message down? Because we would want to make this thing which the Indian Academy of Yoga and meditation, all of us are very grateful to them. How do we pay a tribute to them? How do we really actualize it, sir, when you go out from this webinar, sir? Ashish sir.
Yeah, basically, I think the earlier portion, capitalism is a new word, around 120 years old. The capitalism required a lot of capital to create more capital.
Sir.
The new technological world is changing so fast. It is rewarding people with brains. So I call it the age of capitalism without capital. That earlier, the Western countries had a lot of capital and India was capital starved. Today, India is still capital starved, but it has a lot of brains. given India's demographics and technological superiority over pretty much the rest of the world in every aspect, whether it is biotech or IT or 3D printing or anything, India is going to create huge wealth using less capital, lot of brains, which I what call the age of capitalism without capital. And for that to happen, you still require a little bit of capital in those young entrepreneurs. And that's what the today, first time in the history of India. Earlier, the India used to give capital to only people they knew of their caste. Uh, Today, India is giving money to anyone who has basically ideas and a little bit of execution. And that's what BSc is working on, to provide incubator facilities to young businesses, where today in Mumbai as well as in Varanasi, in Banaras University, they can come and sit in BSc's place. BSc gets them the money, BSc gets them mentors, BSc gets them brand experts, financial experts, technological experts, everyone, to bring those businesses up in every type of area. And over last 7-8 years, we have taken out 800 companies from those incubators. But we have hopes to create a network of these incubators connected to each other, so that the ecosystem of India, which is supporting these young entrepreneurs, become even larger. Today, India is already the second or third largest entrepreneur ecosystem, but going forward, it will be even larger. That is in my opinion. But what I tell my people is that you have young incubators, come to us, we'll get you the money. Then if you become slightly larger, you list on BSc startup segment. Then you become slightly larger, you come on BSc's SME segment. And of course, the main board is there. So if you want 1 lakh rupees, we'll raise for you. If you want 1 lakh crore, we'll raise for you. Come and enjoy the new age of capitalism. Create wealth for yourself and for your country. Create jobs for your country. That's what my message to everyone in West Bengal would be. Don't hate India.
Okay.
Don't hate yourself.
Okay. Okay.
And I come from Joka. I stand at Joka. And let's actually together win the world instead of defeating ourselves by fighting each other.
Right, Jason. I think I've been so kind to Ashish sir, but he had to bowl a dusra to me. I was not prepared. You know, I did practice the off spins and other things, but it did bowl a dusra. Now I'm reminded of Alan Jackson. So when he says that the older I get was a great song that he wrote, that you had few friends but very good friends. And at the same time, India is a country. India is getting older as far as the civilization is concerned. So, but at the same time, the demographics is a huge issue, because India is the youngest nation in the world, with the mean age being 28.5. But what sort of hope do you see in India? A demographic dividend or a demographic catastrophe is one question that I have for you, Jason. In 30 seconds, please, because I'm being told that we have shot our targets, but 30 seconds flat, Jason. Do you see hope?
Two brief comments. Demographics are still the most important aspect of any calculus that attempts to examine the future. And it's why the leadership in Beijing tonight is fearful, and why the leadership in India should be optimistic. The second is, I agree with my esteemed friends tonight about the importance of leadership. And they spoke a bit about Prime Minister Modi, President Biden, President Trump, President Obama, and the relationship between the two countries. I think leadership at a political level, or even in my former life as a diplomat, is becoming less and less critical in terms of determining the macro trajectories of the relationship between the two countries. And I think COVID has accelerated in many ways the demand signal from labor and from especially our young people in both countries for a greater amount of attention paid to questions of income distribution, fairness, participation, treatment of women and other groups, and critically above all, floating on top of this existential question of, what are we going to do with the threat of climate? And what are we going to do about scarcity of resources like water that will inevitably lead us into armed conflict if we don't address this in a proactive and in a technologically agile manner. So the short answer is the demographics that you identify, 100% in India's corner.
Thank you. So I think when Jason said that, he clearly said that planet over people, planet over profits, and not profits over planet. I think that was the message they had.
Ask any young person in either of our two countries, our own kids, our grandkids, and I challenge many people to say that they have kids that aren't putting that as the number one issue. If they're under 30 years of age, every single one of them are saying, "Wake up, guys! This is it. This is our fight."
Great. At the almost at the end, we have overshot, but it was absolutely a privilege to be a part of such distinguished people. I try to do my best. If I faltered at times, please accept my apologies if I faltered at any point. I'll say, but I wish to see all of you again, because this is just the start of relationship with all of you, and I'm sure that I leave the last thing with. We are not expecting an answer from Professor, but I think because when Jason spoke about the water and armed conflicts, I don't know which country is eyeing the glacier and what can lead to what. So I just leave it at that. And maybe Oindrila could come in. I'm sure she's there. And I think Oindrila, we have overshot, but my apologies. I tried to do my very best. I think some sort of a tolerance would be allowed from your side as well. And I leave it to you, Oindrila. It was absolutely a pleasure to have interacted with you for this program.
Absolutely, absolutely. I would like to thank you, Mr. Moitro, for holding this program together so well with such esteemed speakers that we had on the panel. And needless to thank our speakers who put up such relevant points and such valid, important points that we had to put in front. And apart from that, as for our viewers, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for supporting us all throughout our webinars. So for more information about our webinars, please log on to our website, www.aaymonline.org. And with that, I would like to end this program. Thank you so much for joining in. Namaskar.